So again, hello and welcome. I'm Deborah Kane with RallyCrew. If you are here for the talk about paddling in the Canadian Rockies, you have arrived at the right place. And if you notice as you sign in that the name displayed with your beautiful face is not yours, all you need to do is click those three dots and you can rename yourself. I see a lot of you all doing that. Thank you very much. Again, welcome. We're going to give it one more minute to let as many people as possible in from the waiting room. Before we get started, if you would just say hello in the chat, let us know where you are listening from. And because today's discussion is hosted by RallyCrew, let us know if you are already a RallyCrew member, if you would, in the chat. All right.
What's the name, Canadian?
And we've got Justin, who is also on staff with me at RallyCrew. He'll be helping moderate today's discussion. Thank you to Justin, and thank you to the yeses I'm seeing, folks who are already in RallyCrew. Before we start talking about the Canadian Rockies, I'll give you those of you who are not yet in the RallyCrew world, I'll give you a real quick tour so you understand what it means to be a RallyCrew member. And I think I'm going to give it one more minute and then we'll get started. I still see a lot of people trying to get in from the waiting room. The other little housekeeping item, everyone should mute themselves if you haven't already done that. That will help us once the conversation gets started. All right, I'm gonna, knowing that Justin will ably and capably keep letting people in out of the wait room, and in the interest of time, we have a lot to cover today. I'll go ahead and get started one more time. My name is Deborah Kane. I'm the founder of RallyCrew, which is a new online resource for the whitewater boating community. And I'm joined today by Simon Coward with AQ Outdoors. And for the next hour, we're going to be daydreaming about paddling in Simon's, home territory. And hopefully, at the end of our talk today, Simon, you will have inspired some of us to come join you. So again, I'm Deborah Kane with RallyCrew, and we're super excited to sponsor today's talk. I'm going to give those of you, again, we asked in the chat how many of you were members of RallyCrew. I saw that a lot of you were. For those of you who have not yet had a chance to log into the RallyCrew system, I just want to give you the briefest of tours. We'll talk about RallyCrew at a few different points during today's discussion, but at its core, RallyCrew is intended as a new online gathering place, if you will, an online eddy, where whitewater boaters can gather, find each other, share beta, learn about events, and basically get inspired to get back out on the water and connect in real life. If you join RallyCrew, one of the first things that you'll do is you'll create an online profile. So we're basically looking at a list of all the, at this point, 3,113 people who have joined RallyCrew. And I'll just show you one of my absolute favorite features. It's the ability to search and sort paddlers by location, by skill, and by watercraft type. So I could come into the RallyCrew universe and say that I wanted to find, I'm going to scroll down to the United States, and I'll just look for boaters in where I am, which is Oregon. So I can type in United States, Oregon. I'm going to say I want to see all the hard shell kayakers, and I'm going to leave comfort zone blank. I just want to see them all. But if I was, at a particular need, I could also sort and search by skill level. But I'll leave it at that. And I hit return, and I get a beautiful, nicely organized list of all the boaters. Oh, there's someone who's not my friend yet. Let's see who that is. Oh, the Clackfest. That's actually a fantastic event in Oregon. And hopefully this gives you a sense. It's just a list of all the boaters in Oregon. And I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom of the list to the very first person who joined in the state of Oregon. And that was, I got a lot of things open on my desktop. Well, I'm not even sure who the first person was. Let's look at Clinton Begley. Clinton might be known to many of you as the founder or the president of American Whitewater. And one of the things that you see in Clinton's profile is basically that he has done some posts. So RallyCrew functions a lot like Facebook. He's logged some trips, and we're going to look at trip logs for the Canadian Rockies in a little bit with Simon. And he's shared some information about who he is in his profile. So that's a super quick overview of just the profile and the paddler part of RallyCrew. You can also explore businesses and groups that are forming on RallyCrew, and you can also search and sort through hundreds of events in the whitewater paddle sport world that are now being posted on RallyCrew. And again, we'll talk more about RallyCrew as we go through the presentation. But I want to make sure we save most of our time, the majority of our time, for discussion about the Canadian Rockies. So again, it's an area that's been on my list for a long time. As I just mentioned, I'm in Oregon. I'm in Portland, Oregon. And for me, I feel like all I have to do is get in the car and drive north. And as far as I can tell, I will be, in the land of epic boating. So speaking of epic boating and epic boaters, our speaker today is Simon Coward, someone who has been, made his home in the Canadian Rockies for upwards of 20 years now, and is also the co-owner and CEO of AQ Outdoors, which, if you're not familiar with, is a phenomenal resource in the area, offering, gear rental, gear to purchase, courses, tours. If it has anything to do with whitewater, I'm pretty sure that AQ Outdoors is involved. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to you, Simon, to kick us off and tell us more about paddling in the Canadian Rockies.
Well, thanks, Deborah. I'm Simon. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It's great to see a bunch of people interested to learn more about paddling in the Rockies. My accent is not from Calgary, from Australia originally, and got into whitewater paddling in New Zealand back in the day, and
that's you.
A lifetime whitewater paddler and an instructor. So it's telling me I'm muted, Deborah. Can everyone hear me?
Can we get a few responses in the chat?
Yeah. Okay, cool. It just kept telling me I was muted. Sorry about that.
Oh.
So yeah, moving on from that, like the Canadian Rockies is a place that I'm super fortunate to call home now. It's a pretty short jump from Calgary, where we live, anywhere from 30 to, well, actually 5 minutes to a couple of hours, 3 hours away will deliver you to a plethora of wonderful paddling in this area. It's very, very sparsely populated. The paddling community, like we sort of refer to the Canadian Rockies in the East Slope and the West Slope, which we'll sort of cover in a little bit more detail as we go along. But for those of you from sort of the US and such that understand the nature of the Rockies, we kind of have our front range rivers, which are on the East Slope, and then we sort of have our interior rivers, which are on the West Slope. So like the Rockies. So it's funny, for this presentation, they asked me all these questions that put me well out of my comfort zone. It was sort of, you had to come up with these words to describe the Rockies, which I'm not very good at. But as far as the Rockies in 3 words came up with picturesque, which I think goes without saying. I think there's a lot of romance attached to the Rockies, whether it's in Colorado or whether it's in Canada, and they are certainly picturesque. Continuous. The whitewater is quite steep, not dissimilar to like Europe. If you're in Europe, like the French Alps, really continuous and crisp. We didn't want to say cold because that sounds a little bit imposing, but crisp, I would say, is crystal blue water, really beautiful canyons, beautiful rock. And yeah, the water's a little bit on the chilly side, but it's I would say crisp is a good way to describe it.
Perfect. Thank you, Simon. And I advanced that slide on you a little bit quickly. I was looking for the range ones.
All right.
But I also think that you were in general giving us a pretty broad overview of what we could expect if we came up. So
yeah, definitely. And we can sort of bounce around on that. And so The whitewater, yeah, the overview of the whitewater here is it's super varied actually. If you start on the east slope, definitely less bedrocky. It's a younger sort of geologically. So you have sort of, I guess, chossier rock and everything from sort of broad, medium volume rivers like we have the Bow River in Calgary, which we have a man-made course on, all the way through to ultra technical, ultra steep. Some would refer to as manky class 5 in the upper realms of difficulty. On the west slope, it's definitely a little bit more bedrocky, slightly older rock and a bit more polished. So you tend to get a little bit more of that classic canyon kind of vibe. East slope is definitely snow, melt, and rain. West slope is that, but that also comes associated with very high water early in the season. It tends to come into its own when the glacial melt kind of happens midsummer and later in the season. So yeah, craft of choice tends to be half slices and creek boats / river runners. We do have some great play boating here, but the cold water temps kind of probably don't put that in the ideal department for a lot of people. And I would say, just to sort of follow the thread of this slide here, is there's a really strong history of paddle sports in the Rockies. The 80s and the early 90s were kind of the glory days of exploration. We've got a really strong history in slalom paddling here as well. We've had some good freestyle, like not world champions, but people who have competed at world championships in freestyle as well. But a really diverse and a really welcoming sort of paddle sports culture around river running, and a really strong and long running history in the club scene here as well. So yeah, definitely mountain culture here, and it's a pretty neat place to be.
And also some relatively well-known paddle sport events.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think one of the things that piggybacks off such a strong club scene here in this part of the world, we've managed to navigate the decentralization of paddle clubs onto Facebook and things like that, and the clubs here are very, very strong. So the Three Rivers Rendezvous happens early, sort of mid-May here, and is our big kickoff to the season. It happens in the Southern Rockies, in the foothills there, and 200 to 300 paddlers kind of show up, and it's like as cowboy as not cowboy as in rogue, but cowboy as in cowboy country gets. The guy Chuck Lee, who runs it, his name just suggests what he looks like. You cowboy hat, belt buckle, the whole 9 yards. You eat great barbecue, and they provide food and everything. And there's a lot of great paddling. It's often referred to as the Pincher Creek Snow Fest. It's not always blessed with the best weather, but always lots of good paddling and good people.
Hmm.
CanFest is one of the longer running events, and it's close to Calgary, 30 minutes away. We'll talk a bit more about the Kananaskis River shortly, but it's a summer festival, big fun party. The picture you can see in the top with the guy riding the inflatable flamingo there, that's our inflatable rodeo. So that's a legitimate competition at CanFest. So that kind of gives you a vibe of what it's about. It's come a long way. It started out as our national freestyle team trials, and over the years it's evolved. Some would say devolved, others would say, but I would say probably, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. So really fun event. The Revelstoke Paddle Sports Festival is one of the quickest growing paddling festivals, like, in Canada for sure, and it's really well run. They have good funding. They have an event manager running the thing, and it's just some really good beginner intermediate opportunities. But for the class 3, 4 boaters or above, they have some great rowdy races there. So that's a really good festival for the intermediate and advanced crowd for sure. And then the Clearwater River is not one of a kind, but it's very unique in Western Canada. Big volume, warm water. This one's definitely a party festival. It's a lot of fun for sure, and they have some really great beginner opportunities. But again, kind of geared towards that intermediate, advanced crowd with, mass start class 3, big water boat kind of style races and things like that. So Clearwater's a sleepy town up in BC, but kind of comes alive with a couple of hundred people or so for their festival every year.
Love it. I think our next slide is going to get us into some of those regions
Yeah.
that you were trying to, yeah, describe a picture kind of stuff.
Yes. So sort of jumped around a little bit here, but as you can see here, the image is fairly telling of where the Rockies are. You've got that big corridor of mountains in the middle, and sort of Lake Louise to Calgary is what we sort of liken as that's the east slope. And then anything past Lake Louise kind of drains west, and that's the west slope. And so the characteristics are definitely, just to repeat it, the east slope is definitely an earlier start to the season, and tends to be reliant on a snowpack. I saw someone put in the chat, what's the snowpack like this year? I would say that it's about average, slightly above average. We're definitely having a much better year than the Colorado Rockies, which seem to be struggling at the minute for snow. We started off with a bang, had our typical January drought, and things are picking up again. So, if things trend normally, I think we're going to have, slightly above, 15-20% above snowpack average this year. The east slope definitely relies on rainfall a bit as well to really get the juices flowing. Snow melt alone will give us kind of a prolonged low and slow season, where everything's paddleable, but it doesn't get super exciting, which is great for courses. We really like that. So it's a bit of a yin and a yang, because personally, I want the rain to come and everything to jack right up, and then it's really fun. But, you know, we tend to get our best water levels kind of in June and into early July, and then things tend to dry up a bit on the east slope, other than the classics, which are often dam release, like the Kananaskis.
Hmm.
The west slope tends to have like a little window really early in the season, but access is sometimes hard because the roads are still covered in snow, but you get decent levels, and then it kind of jacks up pretty high through the spring, and you tend to paddle a few bigger volume classics, and then as the flows drop off in sort of mid to late June and into July, you start to get those runs kind of start to come into their own, and they give us a really prolonged season within a 3 or 4 hour drive of Calgary.
I think the next slide does that a little bit, right? It places some of these rivers on the map as well.
Yeah, very much so. So just a few of the really classic ones. It was hard to really pin down what the really classic runs are, and these were just the ones with a bit of history and something a little bit unique, I think, was the ones we came up with. And so the first ones on the east slope ones on there are the Cascade, the Kananaskis, the Elbow, the Sheep, and Cataract. So we'll talk more about those in detail in some future slides here. And then on the west slope there, we've got like Revelstoke has the Illa Silhouette River, which isn't on there, but that's a real classic. The Kicking Horse is really a really classic medium volume run. The Kootenays, and yeah, we'll talk about them more,
It was
but
not fun.
that kind of splits east and west slope a little bit.
I love seeing them on the map, though. That it really helps.
Yeah.
Um, all right, smells like.
Yeah, again, so we're going into Simon's uncomfortable zone here, which is good for me. Fresh and clean, that's all I could come up with. It smells like a real version of one of them little like pine tree things you hang in your car. Those things are a little bit aggressive. I don't love them, but if you imagine what the real version of that is, it kind of smells like that where we paddle. If you go a little bit further east, it smells like diesel fumes and quads, but where we go paddling, it tends to be pretty fresh and pretty clean smelling.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone. It's good for us.
It took me a while to get through these ones, I tell you what. I could talk about the paddling all day.
Yeah. Well, okay. This is a good segue for you then. Tell us about the seasons and the flows. You've been doing that all along, but is there anything
Yeah.
else we should say about flows?
Yeah, not really. I think the main thing is if you're planning a trip to this neck of the woods, depending on your outcomes, you can always paddle here. Like even in a low snow, pretty. I've been here 21 years, and I've never had a year where we couldn't paddle the classics at low water at the very least for a period of a few weeks. So if you're looking at the east slope of the Rockies, definitely like early June to early July, that month slot is kind of your most reliable. But then in saying that, it's a quick jump across the other side of the Rockies to get to more consistent flows later into the season. I
Define
think a
quick,
lot of. Oh, go ahead.
define quick jump. What do you mean?
Like it's just a quick drive, like from say from the Kananaskis or the Banff area to drive across to the Kicking Horse, which is on the other side, is less than 2 hours. It's like an
Oh,
hour and a half
really?
kind of a drive. So,
Okay.
and then from Lake Louise to Revelstoke is a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, give or take. So it's a vast country, but the road system, which just amazed me when I first moved here, is you can travel long distances fairly quickly. So you can get from point A to point B to point C and D like relatively effectively. So, if you're planning on paddling on the east slope and it's not working out, the water's too low, you can drive a couple of hours and you'll be in a spot where you can get good flows more than certainly. If you I think if you're looking for hard paddling, if you're looking for hard paddling, then I would say the key kind of block of time is the second week of June to the middle of July is where you're going to get pretty good, like juicy flows on both sides for the most part. If you're sort of more in that class 2, 3 sort of a boater kind of category, you can come later in the summer and have a grand old time, whether it's on the Kananaskis or as the Kicking Horse drops. It's continuous but fun class 3 for the most part. Illa Silhouette drops off and it gets fun, and even some of the classics like Horse Thief Creek, which is pretty continuous, it drops out and a class 3 boater can kind of paddle it pretty comfortably. So later in the season presents a lot of opportunities for those who are maybe not wanting to really push the grades. And I know for us with our programs, we tend to run our intermediate and advanced programs a little later because it gives us just a few more options where we don't stick people on a roller coaster ride and have a bad time. So, climate wise, it's the Rockies. June rains quite a lot. We call it monsoon June. That's been a bit on and off the last few years, but we won't go into that in too much detail. But it's 4 seasons in one day in the spring, and then once we get into sort of July, August, September, we have pretty nice summers up here. They're just short. Don't expect it to be in the 30s too often. Like the mid 20s, high 20s will have most Canadians kind of lamenting how hot it is. So you don't want it to get too much hotter because otherwise they'll tell you about it. And then, but yeah, it's cold water, warm days in the summer, real mixed bag in the spring.
Okay. The next slide, Simon, we had was about what to bring, kind of a gear and packing slide. And it's also a good opportunity. I'm not following the chat too closely, but it's a good opportunity for me to take a quick break and just say that all of these slides, they're chock full of information. And if you're in the call, we have your email address. That means that you'll get an email from us at tomorrow morning probably with all the slides, the recording, the write-up, so that today you can really just be listening, knowing that you'll get all this information in a follow-up manner. But having said that, what should we bring? Gear and packing.
Yeah, I think depending on where you're coming from, without going into the challenges of traveling with boats, we'll leave that to discuss with your carrier if you were to be flying here. But there are a number of options to rent good modern boats up here. There's a few organizations just within Calgary, which is a pretty logical place to fly into. You could also fly into Vancouver and access it from the other side, but it's a bit of a longer drive. But there are opportunities to rent pretty modern boats. I would say that if you're coming early in the season, for the most of us, it's pretty much dry suit weather. Just the fact the water's cold, the weather's likely going to be cold. And I think that that's one of the things that can make or break a trip, can make you comfortable or not. Nights can get down below zero pretty regularly in the spring. So frozen gear, especially if you're camping, isn't the best. So good dry wear. If nothing else, wetsuit, good dry top. That'd be the minimum, I would say. As you get later in the season, on those hotter days, the ones that get, sorry, I'm not great at the translation, but 30s Celsius, the mid 80s and above, sort of Fahrenheit. You can certainly get away with a dry top and shorts, or even some days we'll paddle in shorties, but it's a bit of a rare treat that we kind of do that. So it gives you an idea of the layering. I think those of us who have numbed our hands into submission paddle largely without gloves, but we find that most people that come and visit in the spring who haven't paddled in cold weather a lot, whether it's wherever you're from, is gloves or pogies are definitely worthwhile bringing along, because it can be the difference between a thoroughly unenjoyable day and a day that you actually can really lean into and enjoy. So, yeah, good layers, just plenty of spare gear is really important. And I think with that is just that cold water mindset is you might be paddling half a grade or a grade below what you used to, but if something kicks off and you end up in the water for a while, being ready for that's pretty important. And you can, depending on the level of paddling you're doing, you can certainly wind up in some pretty remote places if you want to, and in some pretty deep, inaccessible or challenging to access canyons. And the other thing in Canada is that cell phone reception is borderline garbage once you get off out of the main cities. So if you are self-directed and you are going to be exploring and getting off the beaten track, I think having a spot or an inReach or some kind of satellite communication device is a really valuable tool up here. It's something that's in all of our first aid kits every time we get on the water. So I think that's an important one to note as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you. I believe we're about to give the people what they came for. Say, well, you've been doing that the entire time. I'm sure everyone would agree. But we're moving into the portion of the presentation where we're going to ask Simon to kind of just talk us through specifics on certain rivers. And before we do that, I did just want to, throw up another screen image of some of what you can expect to find in Rally Crew if you're not already a Rally Crew member. If you are already a Rally Crew member, you know that in addition to building your paddling profile and searching for events that you might be interested in, one of the other features within the app is you can log the trips that you do so that you have a living record of all the rivers you've been on. And on one hand, it's a great thing to do just for yourself and your own, paddling progression. You might not remember what it felt like on the, in my case, I'll say the Clackamas. I ran the Clackamas last year and it felt really low, but I don't remember what it was. Well, if I had logged it as a trip in Rally Crew, I could have gone back and looked and realized, oh, yeah, 900 feet was too low. I said, in my Rally Crew trip log from last spring, I would never do that again. So, on one hand, it's just nice to be able to keep a record of what you've run and the levels that you've run it on. And then for those of you that are Rally Crew members, just, insider information for you, because you're participating in today's discussion, you may already know and understand that when you log a trip, it's visible to you, of course, and it's visible to your friends. You can share your trip logs with all your friends. But we've been hearing ever since Rally Crew launched that it'd be really great if everyone could see everyone's trip logs. And so we are actually now working on functionality where you can, kind of hide your personal information, but we do want to create a space within the app where all trip logs are public so that we can all go and look and just check. Oh, I wonder who was on the Clackamas recently. It doesn't matter if they're my friends or not. If they reported a hazard or a log or something I should know about, I can check it within the Rally Crew app. So that's functionality that's coming soon. But in the meantime, we get to keep daydreaming about rivers in Canada. And Simon, I think one of the first trip logs you created for us was on the, how do I even say this? The Kananaskis. Oh, now you are muted.
Yeah, I am muted now. So, Kananaskis, you nearly got it. You
Kananaskis. All
nearly
right.
got it.
All right. I was so close.
So, there's been a lot of my voice, and that's going to continue whether you like it or not. I guess you can hang up if you don't enjoy it. But I see there's a bunch of familiar names in the group. So, thanks for the Alberta and Saskatchewan and BC crew that are here. It'd be awesome in the chat if you could all add your favorite Rockies run. I think that'd be super neat. So, if you are familiar with this area, whether you're from this area or you're from elsewhere, if you could just like whack your favorite run or two in the chat, that'd be super cool. And then we can just kind of go through that as we go along. So the Kananaskis is our local classic. It's about 35, 40 minutes from downtown Calgary. It's a class 2, 3 run. It's dam controlled. And when I first came here 20 odd years ago, it was the first river that I saw in this area. And as an instructor, I just went, this is my Shangri-La right here. that's maybe overstating it a touch. But it was like I couldn't imagine a better river to teach on. It has everything from amazing playboat features. We can teach creek boating. It has challenging features with simple runouts that we can teach river safety on, and it allows us to build an incredible progression for whitewater paddlers, all the way from like beginner up to being really competent in class three. So it has reliable flows. We're having some challenges with TransAlta at the moment, which we are working very hard to ensure doesn't go. We still have good water flows into the future, but it's a great warm-up river. All of our longer format courses, we spend our first day on it, whether it's, if you're coming here to run class four, we spend time there because we can really help people improve. But we also forget locally how awesome it is just to paddle it. It's a pretty great run. It's hard to get sick of. So the Can is our local, affectionately known as the Can, and it's our local favorite.
I want to call it the Can. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. I think next we have another one that I want to just say over and over and over again. The Kootenay.
Yeah, well, yeah, I say Kootenay.
Okay.
But I can't be trusted. I also say words wrong and I get in trouble. So we'll roll with Kootenay or Kootenay, somewhere in between. So, so the Kootenay is an interesting one. So we in my 20s, I thought that kayaking was only about paddling class five. And as I've gotten older and had kids and that sort of thing, I've evolved into a mindset of being on the river in beautiful places with wonderful people, and my family and stuff doesn't have to have that much whitewater attached to it. And so for people in Calgary and this area, we totally take the Kootenay for granted. You can do a 1 day to 7 day trip on it. It depends on the time of the year, the color of the water, but if you do it midsummer to the end of the season, sort of it's that glacial, silty, beautiful blue water. You have these giant pebbly or sandy beaches to camp on. Commercially, you have to have a permit, but for recreational use, no permits, which from people who come up from the US just shake their head. They're like, man, there'd be a 3 year wait list to get on this thing in the US.
Yeah.
And it's no more than class 2+, really, grade 2+, class 2+. And, early season, you get some pretty rollicking, like big wave trains, but later in the season, it's class 2+, raft support. I know people, if there's any pack rafters amongst us, there's a good forestry road network around there. So people will do bike packing on it. So they'll kind of like ride it and bike back up, or vice versa. And I guess I'm a bit biased on this one because and I know there's other people on this call who have had, core memory trips on this river with their family and friends. And so I'd hate to oversell it, but as far as a class 2 float with amazing camping, easy logistics, there's businesses nearby that do shuttles in Invermere. It's bloody hard to go past. It's pretty awesome. It's one of our most popular trips actually through AQ. So it's pretty fantastic.
It looks stunning.
And the fishing's really good too.
Hmm.
The fishing's really good later in the season.
Well, we're taking a short commercial break from Trip Logs to take you back out of your comfort zone. Sorry.
Oh gosh.
But no, I'm so curious because Carmen, my colleague who was putting these slides together, she said, "Is it okay? This is what he said." And I was like, "That's okay. It's what he said."
Yeah, I don't know where
Gin.
that picture pretty much sums it up. There's, like a good kind of, I don't know where it came from. I went through a period of time where I didn't mind a gin and tonic, and that crisp, clean, the clank of the ice on the glass, and that little spritz of lime. Just kind of, when they asked me that question, I pondered it and I couldn't come up with anything else. So I went with gin. I'm sure some people would go with a good hoppy beer,
Yeah.
but I don't. Yeah, Don, that's it. Pedley Falls. That's on the Kootenay. We just talked about it, so that's actually really good timing. That's one of the really popular spots to stop. So that's my rationale about gin. I'm sure that popular opinion, not popular opinion. I'm sticking with it.
The slide, I've been looking at it for a while. It looked good to me. All right, back to Trip Logs.
Okay.
I don't even. What's happening?
What's that?
Well, I was about to say, it's just 3 rivers? No, what's happening?
Yeah, this is Three Rivers.
It is. All right.
This is the Alberta Rockies Triple Crown, I
Okay.
guess you would call it. So these are our Calgary local runs, and I couldn't pick one from the other, so Carmen just like lumped them all in together. So
Okay. Got it.
the elbow is that picture in the bottom left with Tom in a pack raft. That's Elbow Falls. And so that's our local creek run. It's about 30 minutes or so from Calgary. We can do it before work, after work, early season. Really short, has three pretty dope rapids in it. It's class 4. Gets a bit spicier in higher water levels, but really classic little canyon. Quick, you can do quick laps on it. Has a great continuous class 2 section below. A little bit woody, but once you know it, it's really easy to manage. And then we have on the far right, we've got the Sheep, which is unbelievable, actually. It has one of the best class 2 plus, grade 2 plus canyon runs I've experienced. And I've paddled in 30 countries or something like that. It's unbelievable. And it's yeah, I don't know how to say it more than that. It's pretty, I don't want to oversell it, but it's pretty awesome. And then the upper section has a really great mix of, if you can paddle class 3 really comfortably, grade 3 really comfortably, you can do the canyon. You just walk a couple of the big burly class 4, 5 rapids. But it starts in this big, broad, kind of open alpine valley and then channels into this like just beautiful vertical walled bedrock canyon. It's harlequin ducks all over the place, and there's often like mountain goats and stuff up on the canyon walls and that. It's very quintessential Front Range Rockies creeking.
Mm.
And then again, these are all that sort of early June to early July kind of windows of paddling. And then Cataract is a bit of a step up in the sense that it's a pretty committing remote class 4. We want to paddle class 4 reasonably well to do it. And it has some real test piece class 5, 5 plus rapids on it, which are quite easy to walk as well. That's Titan Waterfall that you can see in the picture there. That's one of the, it's a pretty manageable waterfall actually, but you've got to do like a 15 to 20 foot seal launch right above it to get into it, which
Mm.
adds to the spice level. But that you can do, and it's something that many local Rockies paddlers have done is the Triple Crown. So you do all 3 of those in one day. Makes for a bloody long day, but yeah, lots of
Wow.
smiles on the tailgate at the end of the day, kind of thing.
Wow. That's awesome. And then the gin and tonics, don't forget at the end as well.
Yeah, that's the tailgate. Yeah, they're a bit out of favor with me at the minute. I don't drink at the moment, so
Yeah, same.
I feel like a bit of a that I'm sort of pulling the wool over people's eyes. But there you go, full transparency. Don't really drink at the minute.
So it's high fives at the end if you did the
Very much so. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. We're doing another little detour just because this is surely obvious. I see, as Simon, you were saying, so many people in the chat are probably familiar to you, possibly because they've taken courses at AQ Outdoors. You all really set the gold standard for instruction. You've been, mentioning here and there which rivers you teach on, when you teach, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that people know that AQ Outdoors is a resource for you in your paddling progression. And I think that's true. Having just looked at your catalog pretty extensively, that's true. You've got teen programs, you have youth programs as well as adult programs. You have programs just for women. You have programs for hardshell kayakers. You have programs for pack rafters. It seems like you're busy.
Yeah, we've been at it for a while. I've been teaching whitewater kayaking since I was 18 or 19, and I'm closer to 50 than 40 now.
Yep.
And we've got a really great team, great crew here, and run a pretty diverse range of programs. And for those of the locals in the chat, I think a good percentage of them will have at some point or another taken a course, or we've been on the river together, which we're really grateful for. Yeah, we run everything from evening programs all the way through to sort of 5 and 7 day progressions, and we pride ourselves on having a very structured yet flexible progression that allows people to just bite off little chunks. We're definitely more of a technical instruction program than a guide you down the hardest river of your life kind of program.
Yeah.
We definitely, thanks, Craig. That's awesome. We, yeah, and to get a bit of a taste of it, like we actually work with a really talented videographer named Matt from a company called Flying Fox Productions, and we have a pretty robust instructional catalog on our YouTube channel that is not behind a paywall and will continue to not be behind a paywall. It's something that we're pretty passionate about. We invest a lot in, and we feel as though that makes a really positive impact on the community. But yeah, everything from beginner 5-day programs all the way through to week-long class 3, 4 programs, again, with a very strong instructional thread. We get a lot of people coming by who have paddled for a long time, and we're like, okay, we're going to spend the first morning on flat water. And they're like, what? And no one's ever really complained about the flat water. People dig it because I think we break it down in a way that resonates with people, and it gives them really solid, simple to execute tools once they move back into whitewater again. And so something that we're really proud of and love working on with people. So I'll leave it at that. But go check out the YouTube channel. There's a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah,
And
the
we're
video.
really close to having 10,000 subscribers. So if you don't
Oh,
mind subscribing, that's as big a plug as you're going to get from me, but we're getting close.
well,
I think we get a plaque at 10,000.
oh, really? Or a little
That's about
badge,
it.
a little
Yeah, a
badge
little
on your.
badge. Yeah.
Um, I'll put the plug in. So the whitewater instruction videos that Simon that you put out are fantastic. They are
Thank you.
truly fantastic. I know you're posting them on YouTube. You are also starting a fledgling group within Rally Crew. And I made reference to all the courses because I was just helping Simon get a lot of his courses loaded into Rally Crew. And I was really struck, Simon, because in loading your courses, right, I had to declare, is this a guided tour? Is this skill building? And they were 99% skill building.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so clear that that's your specialty. All right, I think we're back to trip logs. Kicking horse.
King Horse is an ultra classic. So it's actually a really popular rafting destination in Golden, BC. So 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours from Calgary. And early season, when it gets high, big snow melt, big glacier fed, lots of rain, it's an absolutely rollicking ride. It's so much fun. It's so, so much fun. High water, you want to be a pretty confident sort of class 4 boater because it's big and it's cold and it's fast, and even though it's medium volume, it's still, the rocks aren't that far away.
Hmm.
And it's a real test piece for local, I guess, recreational boaters in the Calgary area. What people tend to do is start like later in August and September and get it when it's on its best behavior, when it's a little bit more manageable, and then slowly like level up the water level to a more challenging state. It does have a real test piece kind of class 5 section of river, the middle,
Hmm.
which has been run at outrageously high water levels now that I couldn't fathom. When we used to run it, I was like, oh, this is scary. And now they're running it 3 or 4 times as high as we did it. So it's really varied. Everything from beautiful class 2 continuous braided whitewater, but you go for the classic raft section for the most part, and it's pretty awesome.
All right, perfect. One more, I think, or several more. Oh, wait, I went the wrong
Back,
way.
we went backwards.
I can do this. Oh, Simon,
We're going to New Zealand now.
don't even.
I'll talk about the Skookumchuck Creek because that's the next one while
While I
we're trying
find
to
it.
find it.
Yeah, I'll get
So
there.
Skookumchuck Creek is for our class 4 creek boaters out there. When I first paddled Skookumchuck Creek, it was sold, wrong word, but sold to me as 16 kilometers, so 10 miles of the most continuous class 3 plus whitewater that makes it feel like class 4 as you're ever going to find. And I was like, yeah, class 3 can't feel like class 4, but it does.
Hmm.
It's like, and it's weird. It's not in the middle of nowhere, but you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. Access and egress is really challenging. And it is as much fun for a class 4 boater as a class 4 boater can get if you like continuous whitewater. Nice, big, smooth, round boulders. You have these beautiful, big weeping walls that are moss covered, and you just feel like you just feel like you couldn't be further from civilization. And the whitewater is utter class. Once it gets high, wood is a concern. Once it gets it definitely starts to push into the like really hard class 4, class 5 minus kind of vibes just because of the consequences. but at sort of a medium level, like I think two or so on the gauge and down, it's an absolute delight if you're comfortable in that whitewater. So good, so good. Makes me want to go there right now. It's
I was
amazing.
getting that vibe from you. I was like, I think Simon wants to be there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's great. It's so good.
All right. Uh, Out of your comfort zone for I think it's one
Yeah.
more time.
Carmen suggested country music, but I pushed back on that. Even though the Pincher Creek Paddle Fest is very like that definitely sounds like country music. It's just peaceful. Everywhere you go is kind of away from things and you get into canyons and there's trees everywhere and anyone who's skied in trees knows how much that dampens sound and it's just I don't know, you just get away from it all and feels like you could be a million miles from anyone, which is pretty awesome.
Love it.
Someone hears
Yeah,
banjos.
Paddle
That's
Fest,
good.
right?
I think we lined ourselves up with that for that one. I think
Cascade.
this is the last one, right?
I
On
think it might be,
the
yeah.
list.
And then we have after this, Simon, we go to off-water activities,
Okay,
travel
cool.
beta, and then we kind of wrap up, I think, and take
Perfect.
questions.
Yeah. So the Cascade is a pack rafter's dream in a way. It's a 6K hike in, I think, give or take. And you got to do that with your hard shell boats. There's no driving into it. Very active grizzly bear corridor as well. We had some of our European friends that were out working with us last year run into a family of grizzlies, and I don't think that's uncommon up on the Cascade, but
Wow.
really close to Banff, really close to Banff. So it's just one of those old school classics, one of the early walk-in test piece kind of runs, and class three, class four, and as yeah, I don't know. I'll just carry on. It's continuous, blue water, super fun, and it's way easier with a pack raft. That's going to be my future on the Cascade is going to be in pack rafts for sure. Not in my hard shell, I don't think. We'll put it
All
that way.
right, you heard it here. All right, so off-water activities. You get, I don't know, it's too high, it's too low. You've gone all the way to Canada, all the way to BC. What do we do?
Yeah, I think if you're coming here for the most part with the outdoors in mind. I had to think long and hard. I actually didn't even come up with a not outdoors option. Carmen, who is from, where's Carmen from? She's from
Montreal, Quebec?
But yeah, that's right. She's not from
Yeah.
out west. She was like, "What about the Stampede?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So there's a huge Stampede, which is a rodeo and festival here in early June, which people come from all over the world to see. And I've been in Calgary for 21 years and didn't even think of that as an off-water option. So I cannot be trusted on this slide, as it turns
Right.
out. So yeah, that's a big cultural thing. Calgary Folk Fest is really popular. Yeah, there's two types of people in Calgary. There's people who dress up as a cowboy through Stampede, even if they work downtown, and there's people who are like, "Oh, I'll never go to Stampede." There's not really a lot in between. But then other things to do off the water. There's, obviously amazing hiking, mountaineering, mountain biking. Thanks, Mike. There's glacier treks you can do if you're into mountaineering. There's insane mountaineering here. Horse packing is massive. Like if you come out with your family and they want to do something that's not paddle related, you can go on multi-day horse packing trips through the foothills into the prairies and feel like a proper cowboy or cowgirl. Like pretty cool experiences, really cool experiences packing all your stuff on your horse and that. So lots of and obviously there's not obviously, but Banff National Park, Kootenay National Park, the Icefields Parkway is a destination that people come from all over the world to see.
Right.
Jasper, half burnt to the ground last year, but still an amazing destination to see. And yeah, lots of that. Yeah, gravel biking, eh? Yeah, lots of gravel biking here for those who do that. So I don't know. It's an outdoor paradise for the most part. It's pretty rugged. It's not smooth. Like if you go to the coast, all the trails are smooth. Here it's a bit rugged, but we like it that way.
Amazing. I think the last little encouragement slide was about just travel beta, anything to know if you're coming by plane,
Yeah. So I
renting
think,
vehicles.
yeah, flying to Calgary, that's going to be your best bet to get to the Rockies for sure. You can rent vehicles. Often it doesn't cost much more to rent a truck rather than like an SUV or something. So if you're carrying boats around, if you can swing that, go for it. Just makes your life a bit easier. Do be a bit careful though. They're a bit fussy on scratches and stuff. So if you've got rando like local paddlers with you, just make sure you give them the solid word not to drag the boats across the tailgate or whatever. You can actually rent roof racks too from a few places in Calgary, us and a couple of other places. As far as accommodations go, lots of, there's Airbnbs and stuff like that, depending on where you are. Like some towns in the national park and that don't allow Airbnbs, so you're a bit restricted to hotels and hostels and campgrounds. If you're outside of the national parks and such, especially in BC Crown land, you can camp. I think it's a right to you can basically camp for 2 weeks at a time without moving. So a lot of these rivers and in paddling maps, which we can address a little bit, we haven't got much time left, so I'll probably just hurry up here. But basically, you can camp randomly around a lot of the rivers in BC. And yeah, I don't know, just like everything else, respect private land accesses, lots of bears and wildlife. It's not like Australia. You can't keep your esky or your cool box outside of your tent. You got to lock all that stuff up, or you might have an unwelcome visitor in the night. So just getting tuned in with that. But you can research that a bit more if you decide to come up.
Perfect. Well, and you mentioned paddling maps, and I want to make sure actually that we get there. I know we can breeze right through this next slide. Feels
Mhm.
like rugged, like going back in time, and
Yeah.
smells delightful and crisp. So I'm getting the vibe about what you wanted to convey there. I want to maybe move us through this slide, knowing that people can peruse it on their own leisure at their own pace, because I really do want to make sure that you have some time to talk about paddling maps, which is a resource that you've invested very heavily in. Um, and I want to say, you did just say it, we're nearing the end of the formal presentation, but we do want to make sure there's time for questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and pop it in the chat, and my colleague Justin will help me monitor them. But while that is happening, Simon, can you talk to us about paddling maps?
Yeah, so paddling maps, super simply put, is a paddling location or a paddle spot resource. It's everything from the most benign of flat water all the way through to the hardest class five. We wanted to build a resource that was useful to like the whole paddle sports community, not just the class five boaters or even just whitewater boaters. And so it's all crowdsourced information. It's represented very, very strongly in Western Canada and increasingly so across Eastern Canada as well. The US has a smattering of trips in the US, like some certain hotspots that have become more popular, and then also areas you go in there and be like, oh, there's trips in Ecuador and Costa Rica and Kenya of all places. Like, why are they? And they're just all places that I know people who have traveled to. So they kind of got populated early on and have acted as a sort of niche resource for people going to some of those different paddling destinations. So yeah, it's an app. The Android app's a bit janky at the moment. We're actually just about to relaunch that. The iPhone app is pretty slick for the most part, and it's connected to river levels. There's tools in there to put trip reports and hazard identification and all that kind of thing, and anyone can add to it. So if you're listening to this and you've got some cool runs or flat water locations in your neck of the woods, we'd love to see them. We'd love to see them added because the more the merrier for the most part. So easy to use, free to use. It's developed by a company called Apero Media, which is again just one of my friends, and he's a really talented developer. So he and I have put in a bunch of time and resources to make it fly. And again, just keep it free and keep it accessible for people because that's kind of the goal with all of this.
Simon, you and I, when we initially connected, and I said, oh, I built this thing called RallyCrew, and I just want to make it free, and I'm just working with some developers that I know that are really talented. You were like, oh, girl.
Yeah, have fun with
You're like,
that.
that sounds like a story I know.
Yeah.
So, it's the way to do it, I think. But
Mhm.
taking us to the very end, the very official end of our presentation. A little last plug for Rally Crew. If you're not already in Rally Crew, it is absolutely free to use and always will be, just like paddling maps. We'd love to see you there, and we will be sharing information about future paddling passport discussions within Rally Crew. And, actually, that's perhaps another question to put in the chat is, we've done a paddling passport discussion focused on New Zealand. That was our first one. Our second one was today's discussion with Simon on the Canadian Rockies. I'm fairly certain we have our next one scheduled with Noria Newman. Noria's going to take us on a tour of Valsesia, paddling in Valsesia, Italy. So apart from those 3 destinations, if there are places that you would like to learn more about for your next paddling trip, pop it in the chat and we'll add it to the list. And or, send us a note within Rally Crew and let us know what you're most interested in hearing about. Justin, do you have any questions that you can get us started with for Simon in the last few minutes that remain? And then as we're fielding some of those questions, how's your time, Simon? If we have,
I'm good. I got
okay.
nothing else to do. I just got to cook dinner, so we can roll.
All right. One more time, I just want to say thank you so much to Simon. For those of you who do have to pop off because we're at the end of our hour, thank you for joining us. But the biggest thank you really to you, Simon, for sharing your expertise and taking us on a tour. I think you're going to see lots of us this next summer.